SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Join the growing crowd at Mid-Delta Online Auction. Download their app by searching Mid-Delta Auction to bid on tractors, trailers, heavy equipment, golf carts, and more. Download the app today or call Will Jeffcoat at 662-299-2414 for more details for the first Tuesday of every month auction in Greenwood.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday Super Talk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
What's going on there, Rhino?
Oh, not too terribly much. We've almost made it to the weekend.
Yeah, man. Well, I tell you whose day just got a bunch worse. That's old Anthony Fauci. You know, Dr. Anthony, lock him up forever and throw away the key, Fauci. He has been found in contempt by a Senate Homeland Security Committee, so they got his phone now. Is this guy just a nut? He's using government email systems and government-issued phones to essentially incriminate himself. I've gotten in some rather spirited debates with people about this issue where I feel like he wielded a bunch of harm to the country unnecessarily, but all because of his quest for political fame and fortune, or just public fame and fortune. This is a situation where you got just a lifelong government bureaucrat that's just stuck in a hole doing whatever the heck he was doing, that all of a sudden is on television screens across the world. I mean, just overnight, because of a disease, essentially. And where I drew the line, I was able to give him just a little bit of leeway because he was advising decision makers, not the decision maker, but advising them. That's what he gets paid to do. And the president was relying on him, both presidents, because we still had this pandemic thing going on, the tail end of the Trump administration. And remember, it hit us in like February 20, his final year in office in his first term, and then rolled right into it with, oh my gosh, Joe Biden. And his job was to advise. And I think he got to the point where whatever he was telling the public and telling the presidents, where I drew the line is when his diary was exposed, and it clearly indicated that what he was saying to the public and what he was saying in his diary, writing entries in his diary, conflicted. And it's, maybe you could stop short of saying he knew he was lying, although my opinion is he did. He didn't care. He was more interested in the fame. How could you not reach that conclusion after reviewing all the dang entries in his diary where he talks about his fame, who he had dinner with, even one day mentioning that his comments negatively affected the stock market, as if he was bragging about evaporating billions, if not trillions of dollars ultimately, of wealth. He was bragging about it. That's sick. Well, that's when I just got to tell you, I drew the line, and it's just shocking to me that people are more focused on, well, he saved lives and he did this and he did that with respect to the health of the nation, guiding through the pandemic as he was, refusing to acknowledge, man, the guy was lying. Would it not have been okay, Rhino, for even a person in his position to just stand in front of the public and say, we really just ain't sure? Would that not be okay?
Yes and no.
Okay.
In a perfect world where people are rational and the mob is not beholden to the dumbest member of its squad. Because remember, the mob is only as smart or half as smart as its dumbest member.
That's true. That's a good point.
So if we lived in a perfect world where there was no overreaction, no knee-jerk reaction, no hysterics, and no allowing emotion to override logic, then yes, coming out and saying we just don't know would be perfectly fine. The sad part is seemingly half the population cannot function on logic. They have to run on emotion and feelings and, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. So if he came out and said that, they would have lost their minds.
I guess so. Well, that's a shame. So in other words, you can't really be honest, because would that have not been
Well, that's
honest?
the problem of security through obscurity.
Oh, that makes sense. But that
Same
would have...
thing's used with national security. Oh, you can't talk about that. You can't go to this public space. You can't do this or that because people don't need to know. The terrorists might find out.
Well, yeah, I guess that's probably right. But well, then that's a problem when instead of just being honest and saying, we're not sure. Because didn't he not even say that in his diary? Like, yeah, I'm not sure about this masking and social distancing. I think he said that, right? But to the public, oh my gosh, we absolutely know these masks are 100% effective. And the vaccines will absolutely prevent you from transmitting to others. And the whole vaccine issue of government and businesses requiring that as a condition to come into work, that's already problematic. You could maybe halfway accept it if
it actually worked.
Well, it certainly worked from the perspective of you can't transmit it, but once we learned you could transmit it even with a vaccine, maybe it offered, it's still so difficult, if not impossible, to determine individual protection, but once it was determined that, oh yeah, this doesn't really prevent transmission, man, all bets are off. Then why even have a mandate, a requirement, a policy? Because at that point, well, so my sort of standard is, if you make the decision about your health, your life, that it only affects you, man, I'm cool with that. It's when it affects others, well, then that's got to be a little bit more responsible. But when it was determined that, no, this won't prevent you from transmitting, then there's no reason. I mean, there's no justification for any of that. I just think he knew that was suspicious from day one, but he still wrote it. And I guess the bottom line is, for me, it's you lied, dude. You showed us that in your diary and now your cell phone. There's no excuse for that. And by the way, I don't give anybody an excuse for that, especially when you're providing guidance or making decisions that affect so many people. If it's you're lying, it's only affecting you, that's your problem. When you're lying and it's affecting others, that's everybody's problem. And that's just unacceptable. And that's what he did. So we'll see where this goes. I'm not sure if we'll get anything definitive as far as prosecuting him, convicting him, sentencing him. He's got this pardon. I've heard legal folks say, oh, yeah, that doesn't really apply in this situation. I've heard them say, oh, yeah, he's got sort of carte blanche immunity. I'm not really sure. It's kind of over my head legally, but it doesn't matter. The guy's shown us that he was an egotistical narcissist who was okay with lying for personal gain. That's the bottom line for me. Forget the health aspect of it. You freaking lied. And your lying affected hundreds of millions, if not more people. And that's a problem, in my view. So, wow. The president seems to be a target for wackos, and this is kind of timely. You guys probably saw that some nutcase was casing out the president when he was playing golf out in California at his golf course.
Yeah, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb if you're walking around a golf course with no clubs.
But, we talked yesterday. I had some comments from some friends about it. We had an interesting discussion yesterday about the decision to shut down the mental institutions in this country and force people who are struggling with mental illness, because we had a discussion with someone from Children's Mental Health out of South Mississippi. But you saw this, right? This person's thought to have mental problems. We rest our case here, I think. We're coming right back. We've got Representative Bill Kincaide at 10:35, Mandy Gunasekara at 11:05.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the spiders from Mars. He played it left hand.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio.
Became the special man. Then we were Ziggy's band.
So, did I see where Mondami attended an event and he was booed? I think it was had to do with law enforcement. He's not getting very, very favorable, friendly receptions, is he?
Yeah, that was in Staten Island.
Oh, yeah. They
The NYPD National Night Out August Crime event at Midland Beach in Staten Island.
They sort of heckled him, didn't they? And kind of
they booed him
at
off stage.
Yeah, booed him. That's what I thought. Well, are we surprised at this? I mean, you've taken this crazy radical position. Look, this guy's trying to implement full-blown socialism in New York City with the grocery stores and the rent control and massive taxes. And you know what's going to happen? It's going to fail. And he's going to blame capitalism. It's not socialist enough. He's going to blame the wealthy people. He's not going to change
the wealthy
strategy.
people that were supporting him until he
Right.
put their address on blast?
Right. Exactly. With the pied-à-terre tax, the second home tax, or the tax over what's it, a certain amount of money, can't remember. But this guy, non-resident secondary luxury homes, which there's a bunch of in New York, because New York has produced lots of rich people, and they've funded, they've powered the city. It has a dang budget that's bigger than the state of Florida's. Unbelievable. But he's in the hot seat. 17,000 New Yorkers got letters. And I know you're shocked at this. Many of those really didn't qualify. They weren't subject to the tax. I know you're shocked. It's the not my problem people that are responsible for this rollout, of course. And of course,
I hate to tell all these people that like to slobber all over the government and want government to be their daddy, if you think the not my problem people are a problem now, The problems are only exacerbated under a socialistic system of governance.
That's 100% right. Because you're conferring more responsibility to them because they got to deal with more programs.
And the tiny sliver of capability and institutional knowledge they've managed to fit through their thick skulls goes out the window when you hire your buddies to have the good, cushy government gigs.
So true. So dang true. But no, in all seriousness, it's when you create this swamp of programs again, and you're just asking the not my problem people to take on more responsibility. Well, they're already failing at what they have. You're just giving them more to fail at. Jeez. It ain't that hard to figure out. But, yeah, interesting to see where all that is going.
He's also going to require an ID to shop in their state-run stores.
I saw that, but not to vote, right?
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Got to show ID for groceries, but
not to
I
vote.
ain't worried about it for voting.
Isn't that incredible? But again,
It's almost like they want to cheat.
100%. We know that. Still nothing on that. Nothing whatsoever. Incredible. Wow. So you got this Abdul El Said guy that did eke out a victory for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate in Michigan. He wants you to know, by the way, I'm really not a socialist. She was the socialists really think they're surging, but they're still lying when they say their supporters are working class. They're not. So he wanted you to know that he's really not a socialist. He's just for the working class. He's not being embraced by the working class, though. It's weird, the people that are lining up behind this. It's the entitled white folks, really, is who it is.
The champagne socialists and their progeny.
It's the more fluent so-called professionals. That
People educated beyond their means of understanding.
That is right. That is so right.
The ones that regurgitate word salad that they think makes them smarter than the average bear, when in actuality they're just stupid. And they're stupid because they can't see the forest for the trees. They can't use just a tiny little sliver of critical thinking to work through these ideologies they have. No, it's just all run on feelings, emotion, and being stupid.
That is so true. So he says that people could be wealthier and more prosperous if they endured yet another massive transfer of money and power. And, of course, his top priority is to accomplish that through Medicare for all. Most people want more options and better prices, he says, but this will not be accomplished by further disguising the price of medical services via an expanding system of government controls and rationing and subsidies. But Medicare for all would not be just that, a system of government controls and rationing of subsidies. That's the essence of it. Unbelievable.
My point is made.
I think so. Now, in the meantime, Republicans, guys, you got to do better. The base is lacking enthusiasm ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And some recent polls by McLaughlin and others of Republicans, 64% say high gas prices have caused at least a moderate hardship for them. 56, this is a really damning stat right here, say the economy is very or somewhat poor. 56% say Trump hasn't gone far enough to reduce the price of everyday goods. Disapprove of his performance on gas prices. 56% do. 51% says he doesn't have a clear plan on gas. 50% says policies haven't improved economic conditions. 31% say things have gotten worse 47% disapprove on inflation. And I think this is something I bring up a lot of times right now when I'm speaking to political groups, which is just to remind people, we've done it here on the show as well, this is what would have happened had this president not been elected. The problem is, just from a voter perspective, that you really don't get credit for the taxes you didn't raise, if that makes any sense. So in this case where, and I pointed this out before, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act primarily just extended what we already had. So most people didn't really feel the impact. So you're not getting credit for fending off what would have happened had Kamala Harris, God forbid, been elected and Democrats had control of the Congress. So you don't get credit for what you avoided. And you've seen her, by the way. She looks like she's in 28. And she's not mincing words. We're going to make D.C. and Puerto Rico a state. Stuff we've talked about here on the show, that if they ever got to that position, pack the Supreme Court. She's for that. And, I mean, just those two things right there would be major changes in the landscape in this country.
And if you put on your tinfoil hat and think a little conspiracy, could be one reason why the Democrat leadership is so chummy with their socialist brethren, because their whack job socialist brethren make their similarly whack job ideology seem less whack job to the average Joe.
Yeah, that's true.
Packing the court? Well, that's not as bad as getting rid of it.
No, that's right. She wants to expand it, by the way, to 13 is what her proposal is. And once again, she's for reviewing of abolition or replacing of the Electoral College. Not surprised at that. Man, so the Republicans, I think, have got to do a better job of explaining how the policies, mainly the marquee legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, has affected people, but, you know, it's hard for people to think about that when they're going to the grocery store, when they're buying gas. And like I say, you don't get credit for the taxes you didn't raise, and that's exactly what happened.
It's almost like congressional Republicans haven't done enough to hang their hat on.
Coming right back, exactly, with Representative Bill Kincaide. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. David Duddleston, MD, writes, for an interesting perspective on the COVID shutdown, compare Sweden's death rate to the U.S. death rate. Sweden decided not to extensively shelter until very late in the pandemic, but apparently, had the same death rate as we did. Their population demographics would be a little different from ours, but I would think rather favorable than unfavorable regarding COVID. Yeah, Ron, I remember you and I talking about that regularly, about the difference in their policy prescriptions around it and ours. And you remember when Governor DeSantis kind of was the first to really just say, you know, the heck with all these shutdowns. And I remember when spring break was upon us and all the college kids were, as they do, descending into the Sunshine State and covering the beaches. And I know there were lots of left-leaning COVID lunatics that were blasting the governor that you're going to kill, it's going to be a killer event, or however they were describing it, something to that effect. Of course, that was not the case, but didn't Fauci actually caution against that as well, I think? And the thing that really turned my head around, and I know I've talked about this before, is that I could still see vividly whomever this scientist was that from one of the government agencies where they had been conducting all these various tests to measure the half-life of the virus in various circumstances, conditions, surfaces. And when he made the statement that the half-life was like fraction of seconds or something like that in sunshine.
Yeah, in direct sunlight.
Yeah. So you're standing next to somebody who's got COVID and sneezes on you, probably doesn't infect you if you're in the sunshine based on that.
Yeah, if you were outdoors, you literally had to be making out with somebody to catch it from them.
Exactly. But remember all the crazy stuff about outdoors restrictions? The one that I laugh about all the time. And again, I laugh because they're so serious. And the one that, again, comes to mind, and I'm sorry for repeating this, was the in Nassau County, New York. They have like a manager form of government, as I recall. It was this female. She was at the podium, flanked by all her little official people. And she was going through all the list of the restrictions within her county that she managed. And she started talking about tennis courts and playing tennis. And what was so loony was you can play tennis, but no doubles because you might get close. And how stupid is that? No doubles and so serious about it. Oh, I'm sorry. But they blasted DeSantis over that. And I mean, look, we had some restrictions here when we were still sort of figuring this out. Didn't we have some restrictions like with the boat launches on the reservoir and stuff like that? But pretty quickly all that got reversed when we realized that was just horse hockey. But when that guy stood at the podium and said, yeah, this is the half-life, because before that, remember, we were Lysoling the cardboard Amazon shipments and the door handles to the bathrooms and the...
Well, some people were.
Well, right. But, I mean, that was the advice, right? That was the guidance. And then we realized, yeah, it really can't live on cardboard or stainless steel, this guy said when he was going through all that list of all the half-lives. But that's what I'm saying is, if we knew all that beforehand, then why did we conduct all these tests? Which tells me we just didn't know. And that stands to reason, because this was new, this was novel, and it hadn't been tested. Now, I know lots of scientists and medical professionals, especially virologists, could say, well, yeah, but we kind of have a track record with that, and we sort of understand that. Yeah, this is different, and maybe it needs further investigation and testing. But that's what I'm saying. Couldn't we have just said, hey, we're testing it. We're not sure. But, if you want to be super safe, do this. If not, okay, we're not sure. So, and then, you couldn't go to church. Remember that? We went from, this is what I recall, couldn't go to church, not all, but some, shut down, which was insane. Then it was, okay, come to church, but wear a mask. And then it was, in my church, it was every other pew. You didn't want to get close to anybody in the pew, and then we realized that's all crazy. But okay, I get it. But there's still no excuse for Fauci just blatantly lying. That's the problem I have with the whole deal. So Joey the trucker says, Gerard, I don't believe him, but all these people that died of COVID, he said, was COVID. What did they do? I'm not far, but I'd like to know who's going to be held accountable. I guess put me down in the camp, Joey, that I think that the virus was real, and I think it could make you sick. I don't think there's any question about that. I think people died of it. I've talked to too many medical professionals that talk about, like one of my friends, Rhino, is a radiologist. I mean, they were just jam-packed 24 hours a day. X-raying lungs or reading X-rays of lungs. And he said, yeah, it got to the point where the pattern was so consistent. I mean, it's 2 seconds, boom, COVID. And it's true. Your lungs would just be full up, right? And that's a problem. But I do think...
But you're seeing a similar mimetic issue in the spread of information with the arguments against data centers. During COVID, you had people convinced that COVID was completely fake because the hospital they drove by had a completely empty parking lot and nobody was there.
Yeah.
But then you talk to somebody working in the hospital the next county over and it's like, no, they were swamped.
Yeah, in the halls.
Same
Right.
thing's happening with data centers.
You're right.
Oh, yeah, that data center in the desert's having trouble with water. The one the spitting distance from the Mississippi River is probably not going to have trouble with water.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I do think it's case by case. And I do remember initially we thought we needed ventilators, and then that was determined. Now you're actually doing more harm, as I recall, than good. And remember a goofy Cuomo in New York, he got real uppity and smug and condescending about the federal government and under Trump, the number of ventilators they were going to distribute out. And I don't know whatever the number was, but he said, I need like thousands of them. And then wasn't too long after that, they said, yeah, these ventilators are actually causing more problems. So, but everybody was politicizing. I shouldn't say everybody, but those who sought political leverage and fame and power and notoriety and attention, unfortunately, they abuse in my view, they abuse their role. And Fauci is I think a clear example of that. Who the hell even knew who that guy was before then, right? I mean, the average
person. The AIDS
person.
community has hated him since the 80s.
Well, that's true, but that's still a relatively small fraction of the population. The average person on the street.
They're very vocal, though.
Yeah, I agree. And that just kind of like the data center people, right? Same sort of deal. Yeah, Charles and Matheson says, educated beyond means of understanding is a priceless quote. Agree, it's good. Same people probably say that there's nothing Joe Biden could do about gas prices, says Dan in Hattiesburg. The only people who prosper in a socialist communist form of government are the people who run it, on the C Spire text line. What incentive is there to do better if it's just going to be taken from you? This is Costas Bama Buddy in Jackson. Yeah, agree.
That's why the losers like it. They've never really cared to better themselves. That's why they're losers.
Yeah, agree. It's 100% right. Don't understand, it's on the C Spire text line. People saying things are not better now than the last administration. I'm retired, just a regular Joe that tried to be smart about life decisions. Blue-collar guy, and since Trump has been in office, my investments have done exceptionally well and very excited about the coming years. My family will be taken care of once I'm gone with these investments. Just don't understand. Yeah, I hear you, but I would encourage you to consider your status in life, that you did well with your investments. You're at that point where you're retired. You're not relying on your income to take care of a household. So there's people that aren't at that point where they have stashed away money in investment accounts and they're watching those grow. They're still trying to just take care of the household budget. But I'm with you that as a person that kind of similar to you, yeah, we've seen another record close on the Dow yesterday. It's like the 20-something this year. But this may not be popular to a lot of people, Rhino. You can't deny it. It's being driven by this AI data center explosion. In fact, recent reports indicate that accounts for about half of our GDP growth. Half. Because it's not just the data centers themselves, it's all the other ancillary industries that are supporting the build-out of this platform and these platforms. They're all making a fortune. Coming right back, we're trying to get in touch with Bill Kincaide. Stay with us.
The working man.
Get ready, Greater Jackson area. The big one, the Great Southern Gun and Knife Show, is coming for 2 big days only at the Richland Parks and Recreation Center. Show hours Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 10 till 5. Hundreds of dealers' tables available, full of guns, knives, ammunition, holsters, gun books, camouflage, jewelry, and related items. Hunters and collectors, the big show's for you. Buy, sell, trade, or just spend the day browsing. Ladies are especially welcome. Admission is just $10 for adults and $2 for kids 6 to 11. Sorry, no one under the age of 18 admitted without a parent. Got any guns to sell? Be sure they're unloaded and bring them to the show. Thousands of buyers will be there. Instant background checks available for gun purchases. The big one, the Great Southern Gun and Knife Show, this weekend, Saturday 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 5 at the Richland Parks and Recreation Center, East Harper Street in Richland. Exercise your right to keep and bear arms. While you're there, be sure to register for the door prize. See you this weekend at the big one. Sure as shooting. Don't miss it.
Are you in your element? This is Jeremy Nelson, your host for Element Wealth Radio, every Sunday from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. and Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. right here on SuperTalk Jackson 97.3. Element Wealth Radio, helping you complete your financial picture.
Discover Jackson's best lunch secret at 4th and Gold Sports Cafe, Tuesday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Meat, 2 sides and a drink for under $13. Full menu, and don't forget happy hour, Monday through Friday, 3 till 7 p.m. 4th and Gold Sports Cafe, 5100 I-55 North Frontage Road in Jackson.
At Fillmore Buick GMC, we strive to make buying your next vehicle easy and take care of you long after you drive off the lot. That means upfront and honest pricing, doing everything we can to make the time you spend in the dealership as short or as long as you need. It means we understand that purchasing a vehicle is more than just a transaction for you. We want you to enjoy the experience as much as we appreciate your business. Find your next Buick, GMC, or pre-owned vehicle at FillmoreBuickGMC.com. Fillmore Buick GMC. You drive everything we do.
I'm Caleb Sailors with the SuperTalk Agri-News Network, and here is your morning Ag Report brought to you by Silverleaf Cotton Tracing, giving every bale a birth certificate. Go to silverleafcottontracing.com to learn more about how this local company helps local producers navigate the supply chain. Mississippi has reeled in many high-profile economic development projects of late, but agriculture remains the state's top industry.
Agriculture is still our largest industry. It's oftentimes, I don't think, maybe treated that way in our state house down there. And so that's something that I've always, in my limited service, is to try to remind people that, hey, data centers or plants or whatever else we're bringing in, economic development is great. We're glad to see it. But let's don't forget about the one that brought us here, and that's agriculture.
That was State Senator Andy Berry. This Agri-News update has been brought to you by Silverleaf Cotton Tracing. Go to silverleafcottontracing.com to learn more.
Pine Grove Behavioral Health and Addiction Services, located in Hattiesburg, is one of the nation's most comprehensive treatment campuses. Pine Grove provides the highest quality mental health care and addiction treatment for children, adolescents, and adults. Pine Grove offers many levels of care, including day and evening addiction treatment programs for working professionals. For more info, please call 1-888-574-HOPE and visit pinegrovetreatment.com.
Running a business is tough. If you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you're not alone. Many businesses just don't have the resources to keep up. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. We provide a full range of employer services with everything from payroll to benefits to HR services and compliance, and can create a custom plan that fits your needs and budget. We're a Mississippi-based company that can help you focus on what you do best, growing your business. Call MWG Employer Services today at 601-206-7966 or go to MWGEmployerServices.com.
Brian Haydad with Sports Talk Mississippi, the Magnolia State's #1 sports show. Get the show wherever you get your podcast.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
I wanna be famous, a star of the screen, but you can do something in between. Maybe you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Representative Bill Kincaide. He serves District 52, serves as the chair of the House Wildlife Fisheries and Parks Committee. Representative Kincaide, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Good
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Good to join you today.
Yeah, man, glad we got you connected up. So we wanted to have you on to talk about the F.A.I.T.H scholarship program. F.A.I.T.H, the acronym, stands for Fostering Access and Inspiring True Hope Scholarship. And this is something that you have been heavily involved in, had a large number of students who applied. 170 students were notified that an award cannot initially be made. I don't think this was an oversight on the part of the legislature, was it, Representative Kincaide, to underfund here?
No.
It just ended up with more students than you thought.
It certainly wasn't an oversight, and we anticipated growth. The good part is it's about 300 kids are actually in the program this year. 170, we had a shortfall with some of the funding. And that's due to several causes. We don't get into blame at this point, but our mission the last 4 days has been to repair this and make sure these students get enrolled and get started in their careers. And but it's had a tremendous impact over about 400 kids so far, and we're very proud of it.
Yeah. So you have a personal connection to this, do you not, Representative Kincaide? You want to talk about that?
Well, I do. I mean, once again, Gerard, this is not about me. This is about creating opportunity for those youth that are the most challenged, have the most challenge to go to their secondary education. But yes, in the 60s, I was in an institution in a Methodist Children's Home from 1960 to about 1970. And so I understand the challenges some of these young people may have and their lack of ability to get their secondary education. So this was a tremendous bill that was brought forth by our education chairman. They simply named it after me, and I was so touched and deeply honored to be a part of this, because it's truly our mission is to try to get these young people the opportunities to become educators, nurses, social workers, build their independence and their security for their family. So this is, I'm very, very proud to be part of that.
All right, so to help fill in this gap, this funding gap, the Woodward Hines Education Foundation, they've committed $800,000, I believe, right, in funding to help out here.
Absolutely. But absolutely, what a great opportunity for them.
That's awesome.
As many of our other partners did too, and I want to shout out to all our university presidents that have acknowledged the shortfall and have offered to foster whatever they knew to do to make sure this happens. But the Woodward Hines Education Group really stepped forward big and made a tremendous impact, and we're very thankful.
We still need money, though, right, Representative Kincaide? So we encourage people to donate to the Woodward Hines Foundation, right?
We obviously do. There are, obviously, some very enticing tax credits available. So I urge everybody to support, especially those that are the most in need. As you know, Mississippi is the most generous state, and we've proven that.
Yeah.
And so, yesterday was a big announcement, and I know it was a big relief to a lot of these students and foster parents to move forward.
Well, and it's an investment in our future here. So, I mean, you're putting money to good work here to keep these students progressing on their education.
I'd be remiss if I didn't just shout out to our chairman, Representative Donnie Scoggins and Senator Nicole Boyd have done a tremendous job, as well as our appropriators, to understand this shortfall and fill in the blanks. And we worked tirelessly for about 5 days once I figured out what the problem was, how to get this back in place. But I think we know what we need to do moving forward. Obviously, I anticipate this program to grow. And as you said, this is adding to our overall economy. Prior to this agreement, we only had 8 to 12% of the foster care kids even trying to attend secondary education. So this really gives us an opportunity, and Mississippi will benefit.
That's awesome. Well, we're certainly grateful to Woodward Hines for stepping up to fill this gap. But I texted a bit with Senator Boyd this morning. She wanted to make sure folks knew that we still would welcome their financial assistance as well through the foundation. And we, of course, as you point out, appreciate her work and Representative Donnie Scoggins' work on this as well. So, Well,
we have a lot of great partners in the legislature. There's a lot of things we do that we can talk about, whether they're good or bad. But this is something we truly all can be proud of. And like I said, all of my legislative partners have been very positive in this program, and I thank them for that.
Totally agree, and appreciate your work on this as well. You're championing this as well, Representative Bill Kincaide. We appreciate you joining us. We're glad we got all the technical stuff sorted out for you to come on and talk about this. And again, folks, Woodward Hines Foundation, you can look it up, make a contribution. Representative Bill Kincaide, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Coming right back after Fox News and Super Talk News with Mandy Gunasekara. Stay with us. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this Friday Eve. We are pleased to welcome now Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff. Hey, Mandy, good to see you.
Hey, Gerard. Good to be with you.
So we wanted to have you on. You, of course, know all things related to the EPA regulations, standards, and so forth. And I'm sure you're paying attention to the controversy over data centers is seeming to touch every area of the country because there's construction going on, it seems like, in every corner of data centers to satisfy our need to continue to advance artificial intelligence, and certainly we're, like it or not, in a race with China for technical superiority there. The president's made it clear we must maintain technical superiority. It's critical to our national security and our economy. But some of these things are being fast-tracked in DeSoto County, for example, where Elon Musk in his XAI efforts is got construction underway. Facility and currently being powered by behind-the-meter temporary gas turbines, and folks are complaining about the noise and a bit about the pollution as well. They have, as I understand, like a temporary permit which exempts them from the full scope of standards promulgated by the EPA. Well, what do you make of this, and is this appropriate?
Yeah, so this is actually something I touched base with the Office of Air and Radiation, which is one of the key powerhouse offices at EPA working on regulatory balance that the president has directed. Like you pointed out, he supports AI because of its competitiveness, its platform for innovation, and it's important for America's long-term interests. But at the same time, EPA has the mandate to protect public health and the environment. The issue in this particular situation is the speed at which the data centers are being erected and their need for a power source that is temporary while they're building out more longer-term power sources. EPA from early last year has been working to figure out a regulatory difference. AI has taken what is mobile or temporary power sources. They're mobile in the sense that these are quick-fire natural gas turbines typically trucked in on an 18-wheeler, and they're put in place for weeks to months is historically how they've been. They've been commonly used at natural gas and oil site development, but bring in the data centers, and instead of weeks to months, they're being there for months to up to a year as they wait for the local county, municipality, or state to build out long-term power situations. So from a regulatory perspective, this was the problem, if you will, that President Trump's team has been working to figure out to ensure that the appropriate permits are provided to maintain the balance. Again, development, innovation with public health and protection. That is what's playing out in very real time in DeSoto, as they have these temporary, but temporary these days is longer than historically has been the case. Natural gas turbines to get the power source the AI data centers need have been being developed out. They have been trying to figure out what is the appropriate level of to ensure that emissions, the things that actually impact surrounding areas and nuisance issues like noise, are appropriately addressed. As I see it, both the permitting in conjunction with Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, with oversight from EPA from the emission side, it is on its way to being handled appropriately in the long-term sense. And from a noise perspective, as I understand it, the nuisance issues that go along with these, they're being addressed through the technical development with the longer-term infrastructure that X is investing in this area. So right now, as I would put it, Gerard, it's a growing pain between this temporary state of reality given the fastness by which the AI data centers are erected and operating versus the long-term infrastructure that addresses emissions, addresses noise, and other issues that surrounding communities may have concern with to fully be in place. And we're seeing that play out, rightfully so, in DeSoto County. And I'll tell you this, I mean, if you spend time in the Northern Virginia area, there's data centers on top of data centers. And so once all of those long-term infrastructure pieces are put into place, as the community member or someone passing through, you don't even notice them because there's no additional emissions, there's no noise issues,
right.
All of these things can be handled.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, many of the exterior finishes are such that they look like standard office buildings. They don't even look like data centers.
That's right.
When you're driving along the highways there, and you look on both sides, honestly, through that corridor in the Virginia, Herndon, Loudoun County area, Arlington area, they blend well into the landscape, and I think that was intentional. The issue at the XAI facility, I think Elon Musk made the decision, we're going to use temporary power generation, and then ultimately we're going to generate our own because they just couldn't get the time frame sought to provide supply power from the public utility provider. So they're behind the meter permanently, and you can see in aerial photographs, these are the temporary generators. These are the permanent gas turbines that will power those facilities. The latest statement I think I saw from the company in response to the concerns, the complaints, was next July, about a year from now. So it sounds like there, as you pointed out, not weeks or months, but maybe a little more than a year here in this case to use these temporary generators, which are producing all the noise. My understanding is, Mandy, once the permanent systems are implemented and online and the old temporary mobile generators are deactivated, this noise problem goes away. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I would just say that we're in a growing pain, and it's right for the public to voice their concerns, but you've got to look at the end game. It takes time to get there. These things can't be built as quickly as everyone would want them. Now, thanks to President Trump, his deregulatory efforts and his focus on building out these platforms of innovation, they are done much faster than historically has been the case. But nonetheless, there is a growing pain type scenario. But I do believe that it is being handled as well as possible from both the regulatory perspective as well as the company's perspective and their engagement with the community. I'll say one more thing, Gerard. A lot of the consternation around not just DeSoto County, but you're hearing this more broadly. These are third-party interest groups that benefit from anger, frustration, or just confusing issues amongst the public. And that's what you're seeing play out here as well. These are fundamentally anti-development type forces, and they are trying to muddy the waters and getting basic infrastructure projects up and running. So when folks are hearing something that sounds a little crazy, it probably is. And it's probably from these third-party interest groups that benefit from sowing discontent or fear or anxiety around necessary infrastructure infrastructure projects that keeps America front and center in the long term when it comes to competitiveness, innovation, and securing things like national defense as well.
Yeah, and I think we can't underestimate China's involvement as well in this. I'm reading reports now, Mandy, that they're running like newspaper articles and media reports where they're bragging about Americans going out and protesting these data centers and shutting down these projects. They're literally bragging about it. You know they're behind it.
Of course they are. And it's the same type of template that was used to go after and still go after traditional energy resources, coal, oil, and natural gas. It is foreign adversaries that benefit from America being behind from either an energy development perspective or from an innovation competitiveness perspective.
Yeah.
So when you look at who is behind the funding or the celebrating of the shutting down of these types of endeavors, that should be all the local citizens of DeSoto County or any state in this great country should know that it is people working against their long-term interests that are trying to sow discontent and anxiety around the infrastructure that we need to continue to be great.
So I'm looking at one is like kind of cartoon format, a graphic that was generated by ChatGPT that really blasts data centers. And it turns out that the accounts that are posting this graphic, they're sourcing to China. And they're just saying these are Chinese operatives generating these English language graphics to distribute on social media, and they're coming from these crazy accounts that they're tracking back to China. So, I mean, this is just hitting the news in the last couple of days. We got a break right here. You can hang around with us. We can keep talking.
Okay, sure can.
Great. Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff, is our guest from the Element Well studio. Coming right back.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Hey, you get closer. The lights are going dim. The sound of your breathing made the mood I'm in. All of my resistance lying on the floor, taking me to places.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff. So, Mandy, I'm sure you saw that about a week or so ago, the EPA issued some updated permitting guidance that is consistent with the president's agenda promoting data centers and artificial intelligence. Again, I'm super pleased that he understands how essential and critical this is to our national security to start with. I mean, first and foremost, that's the chief responsibility of government is to keep us safe. And then second, to our economic vitality. He gets that. So we've got to move forward in a responsible, thoughtful, safe, ethical way, but we can't just say, oh no, we're going to go talk about this with a moratorium for a year, 6 months. What are we going to get on the other side of these moratoriums? I mean, what do we need to... Kathy Hochul is up there celebrating, and I'll point the hypocrisy of that out, by the way, and then I'll let you chime in. So she's banning data centers in her state. And about a year ago, Rhino and I talked about Micron, who makes memory, right? They're a big DRAM manufacturer. They announced the construction of a $100 billion chip-making plant in upstate New York. Who does she think they sell those chips to? They go to data centers. So she's banning their customers from building interstate, but she's allowing the supplier to build interstate. Just blatant hypocrisy in my view.
Yeah, or an obvious politician who's just reacting to the whims of a delusional constituency instead of actually planning long term for the either economic viability, as you pointed out, or more importantly, national defense. And thankfully, the man sitting in the White House right now is focused on principle-based decisions with those sorts of goals in mind, which is why the development of infrastructure is really important. And when it comes to permitting reform, you understand this as a former businessman. What you really want from your regulator is you don't necessarily want a free pass. That's not living in the real world. What you want is clear rules for the road or business certainty. And that is what the president and his team is providing. If you want to build an AI data center, or if you want to build any other type of widget factory in this country in response to the build out of AI data centers, whether it's Micron or something else, this is what you have to do to be able to build it. This is the expected timeline. And then you, as someone who's putting capital on the line or other resources, you have realistic expectations of how long that money is going to be tied up and when you can reap the benefits of that, either economically or with jobs, community development, the things that you really want the leaders of counties, states, or this country to be focused on. You want them to be making decisions based off of that, not what we're seeing in New York. You know, a slight digression, Gerard, but we dealt with this. I have a nonprofit in the Bitcoin space that focuses on state advocacy. And when we started many years ago, you didn't have someone who was as friendly to AI development or cryptocurrency in the White House. And what we used to say as our mantra is we want more Texas and less New York, because New York took the position of trying to outright ban this technology. And have we not learned as a holistic nation, banning the newest technology is not the best, most appropriate response. There's always going to be fear. There's always going to be ambiguity. But with reasonable minds, our leaders and the general community can work through those without banning it to our long-term detriment.
Yeah, I don't see any value in just saying, we're just going to pause it and go study it for a year. What are you going to study? And what's going to be the outcome of that? I mean, that's always government's response when they fear something, or when, as you say, they're just trying to react to people who are just acting really hysterically, I think is the way to put it. We don't get anything from these studies. I mean, what are they going to tell us? What don't we already know? That's not what's necessary here. And in the meantime, China's moving full steam ahead.
Well, it's an excuse to not make a decision. And what we want in our leaders, community and state, are people who have the courage to make a decision. And maybe it's unpopular, and maybe it costs them their political well-being in the short term, but who cares? Let's look to the long-term benefit of the people that they purportedly represent. You're not getting that from New York. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised by that. Lee Zeldin, the administrator at EPA, almost had an opportunity to be a change agent in that respect, but ultimately couldn't get over the finish line. But looking at Mississippi, we need to make sure that our leaders who are elected to these positions, that they're not making decisions based off of what is politically popular, but what is the right thing to do with the best interests of Mississippians who are currently working, Mississippians who are going to be working, so that they can live out better opportunities from a prosperity perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree. It's the lure, it's the drug of politics that often gets in the way of making rational, logical decisions, as you well know. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the political landscape while we're on that subject. We got midterms approaching. You've watched it. We have too. This kind of rise of the popularity of socialism in certain pockets of the country, and some rather shocking results at the ballot box. What's your crystal ball say about the midterms?
Well, I tend to be on the side of optimism. It's naturally who I am. And despite spending 10 years in Washington, D.C., the cynicism has not taken over. But nonetheless, I would not underestimate the strategic approach of Speaker Johnson. He has been very bullish in talking about preserving the majority even in the House. And I'll tell you this, the more the socialists win in the Democrat Party, it's to the detriment of the Democrat Party, but it's to the benefit of the American people because they can see what that party has actually become. They have become a party that is so focused on retaining political power. They will coordinate and work with whoever, including people who hate the foundational principles of the country itself. And that's what you're seeing, whether it's the Democrat socialists, the self-proclaimed Marxists or communists that are winning these Democrat parties. I mean, it wasn't that long ago in Maine that you had somebody who ascribed to Nazi beliefs that the Democrats were kind of squinting their eyes and pretending like they didn't see and just focusing on the talking point. We can't wait to take back the majorities in the Senate or the House. They want political power. They don't necessarily care who it takes to actually get there, and they're willing to sell out the interests of this country in the process. That is what is very clear with the rise of this extreme left. The other thing is that we need to make sure, not just in Mississippi, but everywhere, that Republicans do not sit out the midterm election. It always is determined by the people who are willing to show up to vote. Yeah. And that is the most important aspect going into the midterms.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier today. The president's One Big Beautiful Bill Act was landmark legislation, as you know. But the key feature of it was that it extended what we already had in place. So you don't get credit for avoiding what would have been a catastrophe if Kamala Harris and the Democrats have taken over, because they intended to eliminate and repeal all that, let that expire, and insert their own tax plans, which would have made us all pay money. But you don't get credit for the taxes you didn't cut. And that's part of the messaging challenge here.
Yeah, it is. And it's always harder for Republicans, generally speaking, because we focus on practical policy decision making. People's eyes glazed over as soon as I said that, Gerard. So that's the challenge Republicans are up against. But what I think they need to focus on is what they are working on. And this is implementing the very clear vision President Trump laid out when he was coming back for round 2. And this is putting American interests first at home and abroad. Yes, we're in growing pain situations for a variety of reasons, but he continues to ensure that Americans feel safe when they walk down the street, that they have multiple job opportunities today and tomorrow for themselves and their children, and that when their kids go to school, they don't have to worry about their kids coming back questioning basic truths, like what is a man, what is a woman, or coming home as little activists that can be manipulated for the benefit of big government.
Totally
and those
true.
are all wins and what people want to hear about and our representatives can focus on.
Yeah, and I'll add big government and onerous, overbearing labor unions as well that benefit from this, especially in the education space, as you know. Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff, has been our guest on Middays. Good talking to you, Mandy. Appreciate it.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook Paint.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Wild thing, I think I love you. But I wanna know for
for sure. Come on, hold me tight. I love you.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So, wanted to pass this on, Rhino. I was talking earlier about how really our GDP and economic growth in this country, and how we got onto that subject is polls show that folks, generally speaking, aren't happy with the situation. I'm not exactly sure what they're looking at. I still believe that this need to continuously buy gas, and gas being elevated right now, is just kind of the measuring stick for a lot of people. And as long as that price stays elevated, that sort of influences their overall impression of economic conditions. And there's no doubt that that's costing people more money, but wages are up as well. Real wages are up, meaning wages have increased overall, on average, more than inflation. They're outpacing inflation. You recall us talking about during the Biden era, it took an entire 4 years for him to get into positive territory with respect to real wages. Ended up leaving office with a net increase of about $1,000 on average, the way that's measured by the government. But you remember the first couple of years when the inflation was setting in, real wages were negative, meaning inflation was outpacing the increase in pay. And so you were upside down. Now that corner finally did turn as wages continued to trend upward, as they normally do, and inflation started to moderate. But after that stupid American Rescue Plan, which is, in my view, the primary cause of the 9% inflation we endured in 2022, as I recall, in the early summer 22, Rhinos, when we hit that high water mark of about 9%. Overall, about 17% from the start of his term to the end of his term, inflation, its impact on pricing. And I think there's still, because that's kind of recent memory, a lot of people are expecting to see the prices return to the pre-COVID levels. And that's not going to happen. It could happen with gas because, again, that's a traded commodity that is where price of that commodity is influenced by and dictated by markets directly, traders of the commodity, and it's a very volatile demand and supply situation. However, on most other goods and services, you generally don't see price decreases. You may, on occasion, here and there, but and that's because the cost of everything else keeps going up and driving up those prices. But last year, this boom in artificial intelligence, which extends to lots of different companies who provide the goods and services to support the boom, was responsible for more than half of our GDP growth. This year, with GDP growth still kind of weak at 1.5%. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, as recent as this weekend, says he still thinks overall by the end of the year we can get to 3 to 4%. I find that to be a tall order. I hope he's right, because we'll all be better off if that's the case. But second quarter GDP that came out last week shows that we are, came out the end of July, shows that 1.5% growth rate for the economy. And about a third of that came from this explosion of AI, specifically information processing equipment and software. Now, if you look beyond that into all the other industries that are benefiting from this explosion, and there's some you may not think about, I'm going to share that with you in a second, the contribution to our GDP from this build-out is significantly higher than the half a percentage point of the 1.5, so a third of it essentially. So here's a company, Rhino, you wouldn't have thought about. Sherwin-Williams. You know what they do? They make paint. They knocked their earnings out of the park a couple of weeks ago. Their stock's been on a tear, biggest jump in over 4 years, despite weakness in the housing sector, which is what you would think would be related, more akin to what they produce, which is paint. They say that AI has supercharged their sales growth, in particular in what they call their protective and marine coating products, which grew in terms of growth in the mid-teens, far higher than their overall 7.5% sales growth during the quarter. Heidi Petz, Sherwin-Williams CEO, said, quote, when we talk about AI data centers and the build-out, you think of the race of these hyperscalers. Speed matters, and we can provide speed. We can provide comprehensive one-stop solution for many of their coatings needs. So you don't think about that. These are big buildings that have a bunch of coatings in them. You got to paint them. So Sherwin-Williams benefiting from this technology renaissance. Here's another one, wire and cable distributor Wesco, another public company. They absolutely trounced expectations for sales and earnings through their data center solutions division. It jumped 45%. PPG, another coatings company, says there's quite a pipeline in data center work, which is not only fire protection, but structural steel flooring, insulated coatings, and dielectric coatings. 3M, they make hats, industrial adhesives, and sandpaper, in addition to, of course, Post-it notes. They had their best gain of the year. They spotlighted that Microsoft was using their fiber optic cable connectors in their Azure data centers. So, and I think that, hey, there's another one that's close to us in Alabama, Vulcan Materials, one of my big customers, by the way. If you've ever been up on the hill there in Birmingham with a big Vulcan statue up there, I mean, this is an international company. They're in the asphalt and aggregate business, one of their lines of business. They spotlighted data center demand in their earnings, with executives at Vulcan telling analysts that, quote, large project opportunities continue to drive non-residential activity, particularly data centers. And the only point one main point I'm trying to make, first, that's not being factored into its impact on GDP. We're just talking about IT products accounting for a third of our GDP growth. You layer in and you insert all these other industries that aren't even related but are serving and supporting this boom, I think you're looking at well over half of our GDP is being driven by this. And this is a good thing. But you've heard the complaints, Rhino. Those are big buildings and they don't hire a lot of people. Well, what about all these companies and all the people they hire to make all this stuff that's serving and supporting that industry? That seems to get overlooked. But what really caught my attention, you just wouldn't expect to see in a report about the AI boom, is Sherwin-Williams. That's just not a company you think about. But, man, all of these endeavors require all the stuff those people make. Really incredible. Paula Meridian says, I read an article in one particular county that the data center boosted the economy in that area so much that citizens were going to be exempt from paying property tax. Certainly in parts of Virginia, we talked about this, they have their supervisors that run those counties, they have significantly reduced the millage that is used to calculate property taxes. That's essentially the rate applied to the value of the property in accordance with state statutes because of this influx of revenue. that the data centers are paying. So it's disingenuous to say, well, we're giving them all these tax breaks and we're having to pay for that. No, it's just the opposite. You're giving some tax incentives at the state level, but what you're getting in exchange for that is massive amount of revenue at the local level, where I think arguably it's even more important. Paul says, business-wise, this is the slowest year I've ever had. I'm sorry to hear that, Paul. I'm a little shocked at that. To what do you attribute that? Let us know. Okay, great. These companies make money for 1 year. These databases will be gone in 8 years. You're so wrong, Gerard. No, I'm not. You're wrong. Can't believe you would even highlight the companies building the data centers. Seriously? They're in the construction business. Coming right back.
Polyup, Mississippi.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Well studio. And massive amounts of environmental damage on the C Spire text line. Be specific. In what way? What specific environmental damage? Because, Rhino, we've covered most of those concerns, and I'm not dismissing the concerns. They're legitimate. And everybody...
No, they're not.
Well, they're legitimate from
95% of them are just complete made-up bunk.
Let me rephrase it. They're legitimate, in my view, from the perspective that you have the right to voice your concern and to be heard. You shouldn't be dismissed. But you should be willing to hear the facts and consume and process the facts. Perhaps one of the silliest one of all is water. And again, it's because you're dealing with very large numbers, and you've pointed it out. You've convinced me of this. I got to tell you, in my business days, I never ran into that problem. Maybe it's because of kind of the circles that I worked in, just because that was our primary function, was to deal with a bunch of big numbers. But you've pointed out that a lot of people get a little numb, and that's not being critical or insulting. I'm not trying to say that, but it is weird in that you run your household and you're dealing with hundreds and thousands, and you get to the government and you're dealing with trillions. Well, when you get in water, you're dealing with trillions. So when, for example, you hear the complaint, wow, Amazon uses 2.5 billion gallons of water worldwide, by the way. That sounds like a lot, except when you do a little research and find out the world uses 946 trillion gallons of water, almost a quadrillion. Now, how many people even say the word quadrillion? You know what I mean? In their normal discussions. You have to think about that for a while. A quadrillion gallons of water. We're blessed. The planet has a bunch of fresh water on it, and we're able to replenish it in many circumstances. Now, does that mean it makes sense to build a data center, which does consume more water than a house, in the middle of the desert? No, it don't make sense to build anything in the middle of the desert that uses water, including residences, farms, golf courses. That's dumb. There ain't no water.
But they still do it.
They still do it. But it's been a problem in our western part of our country. They're arguing constantly, right, over water, and it really ramps up when we don't get a lot of snowfall that fills up the Colorado River, which then is distributed south into the desert southwest. And
the ultimate irony is that the vast majority of people vehemently against data centers are the same people that think cow's milk is deadly to cows, so they drink almond milk.
That's
not
true.
taking the 2 seconds it takes to Google how much water is used in the growth of almonds.
That's absolutely true. So I'm just curious, environmental damage. So there's really the only other thing that would, of course, you're talking about the water and the water consumption. They're not polluting the water. There's no water pollution. It's not like you've said it before. Back in my youth, the river's on fire around the Rust Belt. Yeah, that's a problem. We fixed that, have we not? I don't think we have rivers on fire anymore. We have now, to some extent, we've overregulated, right? And we've recognized that when we're trying to curtail some of those and relax some of those that were just crazy. Like when the EPA, I think you even talked about it, gets to where, we got to regulate the standing water of 10-foot pond on your.
Yeah, you had a heavy rain. Now your backyard's got a pond in it. We're going to regulate that.
That's just asinine.
Welcome to Big Brother government under Obama.
Right. That's exactly what happened. That's stupid. That's asinine. No doubt about it. So, and then we talk about, okay, air pollution. Well, the primary complaint there is that the utility companies that are building out their electrical infrastructure to accommodate the increased demand, those plants, those generation plants, primarily are fueled by both coal and natural gas is the most common today. I'm not sure what's truth and what's not about. You hear these people that complain about that. What's the PFAS or something that gets emitted, and they go on and on. So it's not actually the data centers themselves. It's the electric generation plants that they complain about. But don't we have standards around that have been in place for a long time? Is that not sufficient? Is that not effective? Because they're adhering to those standards. But that's where that comes from. With respect to modern backup generators that are installed around these facilities, the truth is the modern fixed position generator produces less emissions than the diesel truck on the highway, which are running constantly. These things run 30 minutes a month. That's the facts that people are ignoring when they get all upset about this. Coming right back after Fox News SuperTalk News.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio, hour 3 of the program on this
Friday.
Appreciate you joining us today. So, I was talking about Sherwin-Williams benefiting, according to the CEO, from this data center construction boom. And we had someone that says they're a manager for Sherwin-Williams store in Mississippi. We currently have a data center being built in our area, and we are the full-time supplier for that data center. However, the data centers contributed only 5% of our sales due to the data centers being 80% concrete shell and less of a commercial building. Numbers are being inflated due to the sheer size of the project and less on the actual business. So I got to stop right there and ask the question. Are you saying that the CEO of Sherwin-Williams is inflating sales data, revenue data? That's a big problem if that's the case. If you're falsifying information that you're filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, because this is from his official statements about their financial performance, which you have to file with the regulatory agencies. If you're lying there, Rhino, you go to jail. This is Bernie Sanders crap. Bernie Evers crap. Pardon me, Evers. So, I'm just quoting what the CEO of your company said here. I'm not making this up. So I'm not sure about the exaggeration there. He says, I'm sick and tired of everyone praising the short-term market boom when it's going to do more detriment than good in the long term. We're such a short-sighted state that it blows my mind anybody's looking forward towards the impact this data center is going to create. Well, so I asked the question, what detriment are we talking about? What's the negative impact that we're talking about? I'm struggling to find any negative impacts. And I will also point out, we had somebody on C Spire text line send this in as well, said, we don't, no construction workers, Jason Starkville, stays at the house they just built. And it's true. I mean, the construction business is project-oriented. You were awarded a project, you complete the project, you get paid, you move on to the next one. You have faith that there are going to be more projects. There's lots of businesses that are in the project business like that. I was in that business. And it's nerve-wracking. Man, I hope there's going to be something else. It's kind of a leap of faith you have that we have a good economy. We have a good system, a good economic system. People are always looking to spend money and grow and do better and improve and expand and enhance and invest. That's the leap of faith you take. And when they don't, it hurts us all. So there's some businesses that are not project-oriented. They're what we would call transaction-oriented. So let's take a hospital, buys lots of different stuff from lots of different vendors. Well, latex gloves would be a consumable, and they have contracts, and I'm simplifying this, but it's true. They have contracts with latex gloves distributors, suppliers, and they're constantly selling those things in there. Well, then on some cycle, they embark upon an IT project, what I did. And you go in there, you get awarded it, you finish it, and what you hope is that you got more for me at some point. But the glove supplier is selling those gloves every single day. But you know what? If the hospital took a turn for the worst economically, well, then they're not buying any gloves, but they're not buying any projects either. It's just different business models. It all works, though. You know what I'm saying here? So that's the nature of the diversity of our economy. This is a good thing. But the leap of faith has to be on, we're going to keep innovating. We're going to keep growing. We're going to keep expanding. We're going to keep investing. Man, if you don't believe that, let's shut the whole thing down. How long has that cycle been going on? A couple hundred years, right? I think. That's why we're where we are today. So this is a good thing. And this country still has the best system to facilitate and engender and promote that sort of economic activity and growth. We have our warts, sure. We have our flaws. Still better than everywhere else by a long shot. Evidence, our state, though we're making great gains in GDP, in economic activity per citizen, our per capita GDP as it is called, we're still 50th, but we're making gains, monumental gains. And I applaud our governor to a great extent for that, prior governors. And I think that's because we have overall a good, favorable environment for business. I contrast that to England, which has been leaning hard into socialism and more concerned about, this is what blows me away about Europe, about your time off than you are working. Now, our GDP is 50th, is greater than England's, and they've been at it for a long time. We're now greater than England, and we're 50th. And even the Brits are like, what the heck's going on here? Well, those that do care about stuff like that, then you got a lot that just don't care about that. But you may want to look at the fact that you just opened your borders wide open. You just completely went and lurched into socialized medicine. And again, I'm not talking about Medicare and Medicaid. I'm talking about the hospitals owned by the government, the medical professionals being employees of the government, true government rationing of care, no matter how much dang money you got, at least in the government-controlled institutions. Now, if you got enough money that you can circumvent that and you can get care elsewhere, and I bring this up because this is still the Democrats' holy grail, as you know. This is still, they know. Yeah, and then you know what happens? Then our GDP starts to fall. We go the direction of England. I don't want that. They blew it. They should be sitting on top of the world as long as their civilization has been in place. It was in place long before the founders docked on the shores here in this country. They supposedly had an advanced Western civilization. How could they not be any further along? Because somehow they took the bait and they went into this system of socialism, which is so disturbing that we have people here that are leaning into it. So, let's see. Wayne in Batesville says, I have a friend whose company was awarded a $21 million contract there in Canton. She's employing a lot of people who are spending a lot of money. I hear it every day, Wayne. In fact, the latest count we got was that there's some 88 Mississippi-based companies that have some sort of business relationship on the project, and many of them report the same thing. They're making generational profit. So they say, well, it's only like for 3 or 4 years. So you don't want that? That's not good. That's not a positive. I mean, is there any permanent guarantee in business? There shouldn't be, because that means we don't have a nice, robust, competitive market. What's wrong with that? Who would say, oh, it's only 3 or 4 years? I don't want that. What? To make more than you do in 20? A career? It's true. I mean, that's exactly what's happening.
I would argue that's the short-sighted part.
What do you mean?
It's only 3 years of
right.
generational money.
That's exactly right. That's what's short-sighted. That's 100% right. So who in their right mind in business would say, well, it's not permanent, so I don't want it? Nobody. I mean, they're celebrating. They're high-fiving over this, man. It's a godsend.
If your boss came to you today and said, hey, I'm going to give you a raise, but it's only for 4 years, would you say no to the raise?
No, of course not. Yeah, Mose points out, it's true, Mose, lots of data centers are using water in a closed-loop system, which means that it's just recycled. They draw some. There is some evaporation. There has to be some replenishment. But it still uses less than if you're constantly drawing from well water. And then in the case of Madison, we have the North Campus using reclaimed water and the South Campus using well water from Ridgeland. But the dadgum company gave Ridgeland $41 million to improve their water infrastructure, which, by the way, benefits everybody who lives in the city of Ridgeland. So we don't like that? That's not good? Unbelievable. Wow. Bub in Starkville says, poor counties should be begging for data centers. A Delta comes to mind. It's not so much about data centers as much as it is that's the current economic growth story in the country. I don't know what it's going to be 2, 3, 4 years from now. All I know is that's what's going on right now, and a whole bunch of people are making a whole bunch of money off of it. And thank God we have a president that understands we must maintain technical superiority in these technologies of artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Our very security and economic future relies on it. Thank God that he's not being influenced by the people who are out there trying to stop progress, like Kathy Hochul, coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Touch me, baby, tainted love, tainted love, tainted love, tainted love.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Paul Meridian says if President Trump created a cure for cancer, you would have Democrats protesting for their right to keep their cancer. People are stupid. Yeah, no doubt about it. On the ceasefire text line, Texas proposing a moratorium on data centers. It is not unbelievable to ask questions, it's smart. Or we could just trust the politicians. Agree.
What's unbelievable is asking the same asinine questions that have been answered over and over and over again.
Such as the always referencing the Kemper County beef plant, which is night and day, apples and oranges, not even remotely close to these projects and the state's agreement with them, and the legislation that established the terms of the deal with respect to the incentives they receive. I agree. The Kemper beef plant was a boondoggle. But guess what? We learned from that. We've changed law on that. We're correcting our mistakes, our errors. Can't we recognize that? We still have to keep bringing that up. I agree. It's a boondoggle. It was bad.
It's usually only ever brought up when there's not a better point to be made, because there's not a better point to be made.
I think that's exactly right here. So I think you have to take a little closer look at exactly what the terms of these deals are, and understand how the incentives are structured, sales tax, income tax. By the way, income tax only applies if you have income. Right? So it's not like you've got something to claw back there, because unless you have income, there's nothing to claw back. You don't pay anything. Now, they do have a certain point at which they must pick to start the income tax exemption. That has to be within 5 years of the deal being signed. And at that point, they pick a time, and from that point forward, they're exempt. After that, they start paying. And if they fall below the required investment, the exemption is paused, and they have 2 years to rectify that. So it's paused for the 2 years until they get 2 years of consistent performance with respect to jobs and investment. So the state's protecting itself in that respect. But they're still paying a running ton of ad valorem taxes that fund schools and counties and cities, a massive amount. And I know a lot of people want to see their property taxes, me too, lowered. You know the best way to do that? Increase the amount of property that's it's assessed and taxed. And when it's big corporate players like this that are making those investments, that's the only way you're going to get a massive amount in a short period of time of new assessable property. We should welcome that. AWS is going to be the biggest taxpayer in the state, by far. Pay more taxes to government than any other entity, any other taxpayer, by a lot. We should welcome that. So, yeah, I understand the beef plant and the coal plant. I get it. Two different projects. Still, though, the point remains, those were boondoggles. Those were poorly structured. We've learned from that. We've pivoted. We've changed course. We don't do that anymore. We got burned. Get it. By the way, the Nissan plant uses more water than the data centers do. The Delta has windmills and solar farms popping up, so we're making progress. Yeah, and I really can't speak much to that. I mean, I've seen a little bit about it as well, and a little bit of those as well, evidence of that, driving through. But I support private property rights. If somebody wants to sell their property to somebody else, they want to put windmills on them, as long as that all meets our regulations and laws, or solar panels, I'm good with that. If we don't like that, let's change the law. But I don't think the government should intervene with parties involved in a private real estate transaction. That is more socialism in nature. Tim and McGee says some people are just playing against the data centers. It's not the water, environment, or anything else but ignorance. They don't understand. Well, Bernie Sanders and AOC and Liz Warren, who want to stop it, they say it's because people are going to make money off of it, and they don't want anybody making money. And I point out that, again, our public employees retirement system top holdings are in data center, hyperscalers, and chip companies. It's not in your best interest as a taxpayer to be against it. Same at the federal level, where the federal government has decided under the Trump administration to make significant multi-billion-dollar investments in companies in the industry. So I'm going to pivot a bit from my understanding, Amazon has already purchased all the power the windmills will ever make. I haven't even heard about them drawing power from the windmills. They're connected to Entergy. It's Entergy who would be sourcing some of their power from solar, from wind. That just goes into the grid in general. And by the way, the Texas moratorium, that has to do with Texas's dumb electricity system. Remember how that caused problems a couple of years ago? What do they call it? Texas Electric Interconnection Council or something like that. Reliability Council. It's just was poorly designed. And so now we have data centers that are wanting to connect to the grid. And of course, and it's a significant amount, but they're concerned about the ability of, under their current model of them providing the necessary electricity. So the moratorium is not on the construction, it's on the connection for those that are connecting to the grid. If they're powering behind the meter, there's no moratorium. And that's where most of the construction is going on. The good news is, if you look at investments in nuclear, which you and I have talked about, made it clear. Folks have even told me that. I hear you and Rhino talking about your support for nuclear. We do. I think it was a mistake. You've chimed in on that as well, to stop construction of nuclear power. That was short-sighted, it turns out. That was fear-mongering. That was driven by a lot of crazy people. And now
that was driven by Jimmy Carter's cowardice.
Totally. Who
you can draw the line all the way back to that man and his inability to stand up and tell these stupid people in his party to sit down and shut up.
So if we'd have continued Rhino on the trend until he stopped it, we wouldn't even be having this electricity conversation, right? Wouldn't even be having it. The good news is there's a resurgence. We shared it the other day. A number of nuclear plants being built across the country, many of which will be dedicated to the data centers. They're the ones who are building them. They're paying third parties to build nuclear plants. But I looked at a map of where that construction is occurring, all over Texas, because they have the biggest need. Their dumb system, it isn't sufficient to accommodate their growth without data centers, much less with it. So they're stepping up, and there's lots of construction of nuclear going on behind the meter and in front of the meter that's inserting. And in fact, you know what's going to happen? These hyperscalers, this will piss off Bernie and Liz as well. They're going to get mad because they're going to sell their excess electricity into the grid from the nuclear plants, and they're going to make money off of it. They're going to get mad about that. They just, in general, they oppose profit is the bottom line. So while we're talking about taxes, this is something that has gotten the attention of our announced candidates for governor. Probably the one who's issued the most about taxes is Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson, is in terms of proposals. So he wants to cut our car tags in half through an enhanced state legislative tag credit fund. So you may know now that some of your ad valorem taxes on your vehicle are actually covered by this fund from the state, thus you're not paying it. So the millage is applied and your taxes are calculated, and you get this credit from the state, if you will, that covers that. He wants to cut the cost in half. So I did a little research on that. That's about $350 million. But even though you're cutting car tags at the county level, because that's who we buy our car tags from, county government, that's why you got your county on your car tag on the back imprinted on it. Now the money gets distributed amongst school districts, the county, and if you live in the city, they get a piece of that as well. This is $350 million, though. It's what that would cost to cut it in half. We're talking about increasing state spending by $350 million. That's what it would take to fund this enhanced proposed legislative tag credit fund to cover. So they're not saying, hey, counties, school districts, best I can tell when you talk about expanding the amount that goes into this tag credit fund, what you're saying is we're going to spend more money at the state level so that your taxes are lowered at the local level on your car tags. That wouldn't be considered, I guess, just a straight tax swap, but it is an increase in state spending to cover. Coming right back with more on that from the Element Wealth studio.
From the
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So on the C Spire text line, we were just talking about that Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson, a candidate for governor, published his various proposals to reform taxes in the state of Mississippi. He calls that to make Mississippi affordable again plan. And item A on his list is cutting car tags in half. Man, nobody likes buying those car tags. I agree. I don't like it either. We do have the second highest priced car tags in the country. I think South Carolina is the only state that has more pricey car tags than we do. But as we've explained so many times, pick your poison. The state's going to get, government's going to get its money one way or another. In the state of Mississippi, car tags are elevated because we have overall low sales taxes. And in lots of states that have low car tags, they have higher real estate property taxes and or higher sales taxes. So, again, it's just pick your poison where you want that money come from. But the fact is, cutting it in half means cutting about $350 million of revenue to school districts and counties and cities across the state. That's half of the take from car tags. Well, the proposal is to cover that by spending more state money through the legislative tag credit fund, something established, I want to say back in the 90s maybe, Rhino. It was just a way to kind of reduce the burden of car tag taxes, ad valorem taxes on cars, essentially, the state. So the bottom line is the state's making the cities, counties, school districts whole for the amount that the consumers don't pay when taxpayers pay when they buy their car tags. You looking at that about when that was implemented?
Yeah, that came out in 94.
That's what I thought. Yeah, 94. So it's been around a while. So the proposal is
it
just
comes from taxes paid on the sale of vehicles. So I mean,
that's right. Which goes to the state.
You're playing a shell game here.
That's exactly what's happening. That's the point. It's just kind of shifting it around. Then another is to institute a new per-child tax credit on the purchase of new automobiles. So I'm not sure if that's a tax credit on income taxes, on sales taxes, and in per child. So I think what the proposal here is if you have a household with a child in it and you go buy a car, you would qualify for this tax credit. I guess if you don't have a child, you don't qualify. You don't get it. And again, I'm assuming this is on income taxes. I don't think this would be, it doesn't say this would be a credit against the sales taxes you pay. And then expand the homestead exemption over a 3-year period to reduce. And by the way, that means less money to the state. Expand the homestead exemption over a 3-year period to reduce and cap or eliminate property taxes on Mississippi homeowners, beginning with senior citizens. Same issue. Are we going to cover that from the state? Doesn't say. Or are we just telling, again, school districts, counties, and cities, you got to deal with less money because we're going to increase the homestead exemption. And again, the goal is to reduce property taxes on real property. My personal opinion is that no proposals regarding revenue or spending that are permanent in nature like this. Spending is appropriated on an annual basis, but when you're talking about tax policy, that's more permanent in nature. That would be done through law, through statute. Shouldn't do that without recasting the budgets of every entity impacted by the revenue. So that would mean every school district, every county, every city in the state should be required to recast their budget reflecting this additional homestead exemption, because that means less revenue to them, unless, again, the plan is to cover that and it's not clear at the state level. Establish a new tax credit for first-time home buyers. So if it's not your first, I guess you're out of luck. You don't get the benefit of that one. I'm assuming that's an income tax credit. Again, that's less revenue to the state. So think about that, Rhino. We got less revenue coming in to the state from the credit that would be provided on the purchase of new automobiles, less on the credit provided to first-time home buyers, an increase in spending on the legislative tax credit. So you got a reduction of revenue, increase in spending. And then support President Trump and adopt a Mississippi ratepayer protection plan to guarantee all data centers pay their own way for electricity. Already included in the statute in the legislation passed in 2024, which revised the provisions around incentives for data centers. It's already included. I don't know that this really accomplishes anything. By the way, right here on the screen, Ro Khanna's Data Center Bill of Rights maintains states' ability to adopt pauses on data centers, require data centers to use clean energy. That's what he wants. That's in his Bill of Rights.
I bet he doesn't consider nuclear clean.
Correct, which means we might as well just shut down and give it to China. That's what you're doing here. So that's, of course, completely...
I double-checked, and as of the current data, Mississippi is the fourth most expensive tax.
Okay. Well, when I checked it a couple of months ago, we were second to South Carolina. So
yeah, I kept seeing that, and I was like, hang on, where's the actual data? Because all I kept seeing was, I think it was State Auditor Shad White put out a press release on it.
Second. He said we were second. So what's true? Who's 1, 2, 3?
Delaware is way out in front. Their average registration and documentation fees are $2,159.
Okay.
Number 2 is Florida at $1,296.
Okay.
Behind them is Colorado at $1,294. And then coming in fourth is Mississippi at $1,144 on average.
So let's think about Florida. We always like to point to Florida. They don't have an income tax, but yet they have higher, like we said, you're going to get their money somewhere. By the way, look at their property, their real property taxes. It's also about 30% higher than Mississippi's, and sales taxes are higher. They get their money one way or another. Like I've said on this program before, it ain't like they've cracked the code of how to operate with less money. Have they compared to New York? Yeah, but that's insane. That's not even a valid comparison because they just give away everything.
And a data point on having a large corporate tax base.
Yes.
Arkansas is dead last at $157.
There you go.
And Wally World's headquartered in Arkansas.
Correct. So is Tyson's, and you go up in that northern part of the state, that northwest corner of the state, just flooded with corporate headquarters paying C-Corp taxes, which is something we desperately need here. And you're not hearing anybody talk about that. That's the way you move the needle. And Texas is loaded up with that as well.
Yeah, Texas is third from last at 224.
Right. But they do have high real property taxes in Texas. And I've heard people that said, yeah, man, I couldn't believe how low my taxes were when I moved from property taxes from Texas to Mississippi. I've heard people say that moved to Texas from Mississippi say, couldn't believe. But yet their car tags are lower. So, again, they get their money one way or another. But what they have, we talked about it yesterday, they have this oil and gas severance tax. We don't have as robust an industry as they do there. They've been doing that for years, right? It's a moneymaker for them. And they have a bunch of corporate headquarters that pay C-Corp taxes. So the commissioner also says he wants a new income tax credit for working moms and dads with incentives for employers to adopt new child care services. So that's, again, less revenue to the state. Eliminate the marriage tax penalty by fully eliminating the state income tax in year one for all married couples. So this is where I got confused, Rhino. If you're going to eliminate income taxes year one for all married couples, then why do you need an income tax credit on child care?
Because he's got to politically balance out the young people and the old people, because he's promising the old people to do away with their property taxes.
But if you don't have any income taxes, what do you need tax credits for?
It's political. He's got to have a carrot to give the young people and a carrot to give the old people.
Okay, so like the per-child tax credit or purchase of new automobile, well, what are you crediting against if you don't have any taxes? Now, you could be a single person with a child. I get that, where it would apply. But I think the idea here was to try to get more people to marry and have families. And then it's something else. Stabilize and fully fund the state public employees retirement system for state retirees, etc. Teachers who have worked hard for decades. Okay, but so now we're increasing spending. So we got a tag credit increasing spending. We got PERS increasing spending. Yet we're getting rid of revenue and we're issuing tax credits. I want to see the budget recast. Paint me skeptical on this one to make the math work. And then it says accelerate the full repeal of state income tax for individuals. But, okay, so I guess that wouldn't apply to married couples because we're doing that in year one. Okay. We're coming.
I think it's year one of being married.
Oh, okay. That's what that means?
That's what I took it as.
Maybe
because
so.
That's the problem when you get married. If somebody's in a different tax bracket,
coming right back.
You're getting taxed more.
I got you.
Hello, I'm Joe. We're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back. It's the final segment as we head into the final day of the week. The next day, our next show, I should say. Still waiting for some action over the Strait of Hormuz. Conflicting reports, not a surprise. What the president tells us, what Iran tells us. Of course, Iran completely untrustworthy. We were just reviewing Commissioner Andy Gibson's tax reform plans, and somebody asked, what Fortenberry physical therapy? I got it via email. I think he's published it somewhere as well.
Yeah, he put it out on social media.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. So I want to review this, eliminate the marriage tax penalty by fully eliminating the state income tax in year one for all married couples. I'm reading verbatim from the plan. I stand corrected. Rhino, I think you're right. I was thinking more like politicians like to proclaim. I was telling Rhino this on the break. I'm going to do this year one, day one. What he's referring to here, I think you're right, is that the first year of marriage, you just wouldn't have any income tax. But then you brought up a good point. Well, what if it's your second or third or fourth marriage? And how in the world are we going to police this as well? And then, okay, but you get married, you get a break, but I'm just an individual over here. I've chosen not to get married. I don't get a break. I think.
That's a conversation that's been going on for generations now.
Yeah, to a great extent. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that because we only have one bracket, you don't have this bracket creep issue you do with the federal taxes in the state, because we only have one bracket. Right now it's 4%. And by the time the next governor takes office, that first year, we'll be down to 3.5% of all taxable income north of $10,000. That's already in place. So we're phasing out the income tax now, as you guys know. We do have to satisfy some triggers once we get into, what would it be, 2031, I believe, Rhino? So the next year we start the quarter point decrements, quarter point over 4 years. That would be 27, 28, 29, 30. And then in 31 is when we get down to 3% and we start doing these tests, so-called triggers, where there's a drafting error in the legislation. here's the concern I have is that if we're going to reduce revenue by eliminating the taxes on married couples in year one, we're going to have an income tax credit on child care. We're going to exempt sales tax for certain baby items. That's revenue to, of course, the state. We're going to increase the legislative tag credit fund to cover the full 50% of the reduction in car tax. That needs about $350 million. We're going to have a per-child tax credit on new automobiles. That's less revenue. If we're going to expand the homestead exemption at the local level and cover that with state funds, that's more spending at the state level. And then, of course, fully funding PERS, that's a huge amount of more spending. So we got spending going up, we got revenue going down. We're projected to produce about a $260 million surplus for fiscal year 27 based on sine die LBO, Legislative Budget Office estimates for revenue. So just the legislative tax credit exceeds that surplus. Just that. We haven't even gotten to all the other stuff. That's why I say really it is incumbent upon us as voters, as citizens, to request that those who make these proposals, it doesn't matter what the difference, unfortunately, at the federal level is, they just run deficits and print money. But at the state level, you can't do that. You got to balance the budget. So it makes sense that every entity.
We want to secede.
Right, exactly.
Print our own money.
Oh boy! Exactly. Don't give anybody any ideas. So the state budget should be recast for some extended period of time, say 10 years, to account for all these reforms. That should show how does this affect it. I don't even know how you would estimate, for example, the credit on car tax, not on car tax, on new car purchases, the per child tax credit. I don't know how you'd estimate that. How you'd estimate the amount it would cost to, again, eliminate income taxes in year one for a married couple. How do you estimate how many people are going to get married and what that means in terms of revenue to the state? And then, of course, all the school districts and counties and cities affected in any way by these reforms in ad valorem taxes. That's what they rely on to operate. They should be required to recast their budgets to show what that would look like. So otherwise, you're just putting stuff on a piece of paper to get people excited about getting their taxes cut. I'm all for that, but I'm also practical. And I'm logical and reasonable and think, yeah, this is the way you'd have to do it in business. You make proposals that are going to affect your spending, your expenses, or your revenue in some significant way, you're going to have to do some modeling of that. Make sure that stuff's going to work out. You don't just throw it out there and get elected, then say, okay, sorry, I really couldn't get that done. Out of here today, you're laughing about that. Back tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.